Bob, would you mind kicking us off with an invocation?
Lord, we are so mindful of the fact that we have a responsibility to the people of this county. Help us to make decisions in your wisdom. We are so mindful of the fact that we long for the wisdom that comes from above. Be with us as we discern amongst ourselves what needs to be taken care of, and help towards you. We're so grateful for the sacrifice that your Son made upon the cross that gave us the hope of eternal life. Be with us as we continue on the rest of this week. We ask this in your Son's name, Jesus Christ.
All right. I'd like everybody to take a second to look over the agenda. Just note, I don't think we have everything that we discussed from last month, but we've got some more of that from our next meeting. But what we're going to cover today is in here. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We've got 57 minutes before some of these folks have to be across the hall to a commission meeting, right? Seven? Oh, okay, so we have some time. So we do have a little bit of time to recognize the public. I see there's a lot of folks here. If anybody has some comments or questions.
Laura, been here 424 Amy Reed Road in Portland. I just wanted to commend this committee on the work that you're doing. I think this is maybe one of the most important committees that exists. The duty of the legislative body at all levels is to manage the money of the county, and this has been seriously overlooked and not given the diligence that you all appear to be doing. And I commend you for that, and I know there's probably going to be some requests in here to fund some additional folks in the finance department. I think that's kind of long overdue, and I also think that that would be one of the wisest investments we could make, even though, as most of you know, I'm a huge watchdog with taxpayer dollars, but I think that in the long run it will really pay off, because we just do not have a good enough handle on all the ways that we spend money here, and having that consolidated in a system the way it should be, in the way any business would be managed. And finally, I would just say that one of the issues that was brought up in the discussions over the last couple of months is the withholding of pay for new employees. And I think it's going to be very painful to get through that transition for people who have worked for the county for a long period of time, but it has got to be done. And no other entity that handles money when people get paid in advance of their work. You're going to pay a contractor in your home, and we can't do that. The only reason we've gotten away with it is because of taxpayer dollars, and we're not accountable to the taxpayers. So we should be, but that's not been the attitude. And so I really appreciate what y'all are doing and bringing all this stuff out here and the work that you're going to be doing. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Yeah. All right, appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, your next regularly scheduled meeting is actually on, or is it the before? It's actually the 3rd, so it's the 18th, and never mind, it's the week before. No, it's the 4th week, you're correct. It's actually scheduled the 25th, so you may want to look about rescheduling it.
Okay. Do we need to have a motion to reschedule it, or can we just do it?
We can just email out and probably reschedule with you guys, or you guys tonight, if you want to do it.
Okay. Does 18th work for anybody, or push back to next year?
I'm having a lot of trouble with Resource Authority because they've made their meetings on the 4th, Monday night, out at the Resource Authority location. So I've got to figure out something. I don't know if we can move, or if they can move, or if I can move away from them and somebody else can fill, but that's something we can handle offline.
Okay.
Is there any committees on the 3rd Monday at 5 or 6?
Usually that's general commission.
Right, but I mean, is there any meetings for
If we keep it 5 o'clock on
5 or 6? Because most times it's shorter. It may be good to put 6 o'clock right before the commission meeting. a way to keep from that conflict and also another night meeting. You guys having to drive in another night and stop that too.
I thought we split the difference, say 5:30. Because honestly, with what we've got to do tonight, I don't know, 2 hours it might suffice, so. And I would hate to think that we've cut ourselves short, on things that need to be done, because there's a lot of things that need to be done.
If you want to set that as your regular schedule, the third Monday, that'd be right before county commission at 5:30.
And the commission starts at 7.
I'll give you an hour and a half every Monday before the commission. The commissioners will be here anyway.
I'm fine with that. Do we have time to move next month up to the 18th, or
Yeah, there's plenty of time at this point. We notice it and then get
we need a motion, or we just send out a notice?
If you're in agreement, we can just go ahead and send it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to vote on it here, but yeah.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we move our regular scheduled meetings to the third Monday night at 5:30.
So,
All opposed, or all in favor?
uh,
Opposed? See everybody December 18th at 5:30. Everybody can look to page 2 and 3, through last meeting's minutes. It's quite a bit here, but like I said, I don't think we're going to cover a few of the topics that are in here. I think Laura brought up one of the topics, and the policy stuff we still got to work offline. We won't be discussing today, but we do have a few updates in here.
A question. So David, last meeting, we talked about getting a prioritized list of those needs in your department. Is that part of this packet?
Yeah, it's right here. I'm going to go through it tonight.
Okay.
It's already in there.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
so there's a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You still understand I wasn't here.
Yes.
Gotcha. Oh, gotcha. No report from the committee chair today, Mr. Mayor?
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Eric?
Just a little bit, I'm in the process of working with finance on trying to piggyback a change about moving some contracts into where there's a little bit more oversight. And while that's occurring, I'd like to up the limit we changed about 6 months ago for some breathing room on my end. I'd like to move it up to about 5 or 10,000. Because I don't see any, I haven't seen any contracts come across my desk to where there'd be any significant impact if something were to get through that couldn't be managed, but obviously it's y'all's discretion. And a couple of bullet points for guidance and how to approve lower amounts, but that's all I've got.
Can I make a comment about that? What we were talking about is, as Eric said, moving the limit up right now, because there is a cost to review all those. Number 2 is to put 4 bullet points with the most troublesome things that may be found in ones that are under the $5,000 or $10,000 limit. And then number 3, that all contracts that don't require approval be sent to finance. And there's a reason for that. Is one, if there is a problem later with one of these under 5,000 or 10,000, and then number 2, we just complied with 2 GASB statements, and they were for leases and for software, and we had to have all those contracts with all those terms to determine those, and some were upwards of 10 years old, so we needed a way to get them at the front and put them into munis, because that did create a significant issue. And my thought process was to actually bring up the limit on the legal review, because there's a certain amount of acceptable risk and there's a certain amount of costs to review these contracts. That's something to mention. But I thought it's something this committee might want to consider amending and sending forward tonight.
David, let me ask you, those below, say, 5,000, do we know the volume of those?
I would say Well, we've got the $1,000 threshold now, which took quite a bit off the plate. Between the 1,000 and the 5, I would say probably 25 to 30% of them.
We've also got to look what constitutes a contract, what we've ran into too. So for instance, if basically it's legally binding and it has all the terms and enforceable, it creates a contract. So a PO and a sales order is usually enough to create a contract for the county. So that's what we're running into, but virtually everything in some form is creating a contract if you're not really careful. So there's more and more of them every day the closer we look. I think the last one was somebody asked for a PO, and when we started looking at the PO and the sales contract, and it said, see the attached terms, when we started looking at those together, they definitely formed a very strong contract. But on the front, you just have sales quote. So that's what kind of brought this about, because the number of them just increases every month when we start looking.
Right, so let me ask you, if we did raise the limit, 5,000 may be the right number, I don't know. What is the downstream, what are the downstream controls if he doesn't do that?
Here's kind of my thought process. You put the $5,000 limit, then you say the departments are required to, any contracts they submit cannot contain hold harmless. What was the 4 things we talked about?
It was hold harmless. The biggest ones I run into is litigation has to be in Tennessee, the hold harmless, attorney's fees provisions, and ADR, which is alternative dispute resolution, like mediation, arbitration. Those are the 4 big ones.
And then at the same time, we'll scan them in finance if there is a problem, legal can look at them, because you really got to think, a $5,000 contract usually just a $5,000 risk, but if we spend $250, $500 reviewing every one of those, the cost risk benefit analysis goes way down.
No, I'm with you, I'm just trying to understand what the downstream controls are.
We'll have them scanned in, but the thing is, us reviewing them will take time too if we did, so we're thought put the requirement on the departments, and we'll just scan as we go in. If we happen to see one, we'll reject them back.
Would that be, would there be some audit element of that, like internal audit? Would they look at those downstream, or is that part of maybe a comptroller's review, or is the scope too small for that, or?
Well, we don't have an internal audit, and our people are more looking to make sure invoices and POs, and it's reviewed by legal, so that's something we're going to discuss if we can kind of skim through it because of the volume right now with the other stuff. But
And I will say that's something I encounter more often than I like is I'll be given nothing but a purchase order, and I'll say, all right, well, there's no legal problems with this, it's just a purchase order. I don't find out there's a contract until finance gets back with me because they've scrutinized the purchase order and the invoice statement from the vendor, and then, lo and behold, there's this. So we kind of have an audit trigger there in both of us trying to overlap.
so if you request a PO, we ask for a contract if it exists already. We probably need it in policy. And if we find a sales invoice, we've asked now for all the terms and conditions to be sent, because with this GASB for the leases and the software, we had significant issues because we, in the past, legal reviewed every contract, so they would sign on what they got. And then we also had sales invoices, and it would say, see attached terms, but we couldn't get into the accounts, and the departments had issues getting into the accounts because they were older. So it's kind of created this issue that we need to fix. We fixed it this year. It took a lot of time to fix it going forward, where we have all of it, and then, right now, I just honestly think the amount of time being reviewed on the contracts, the cost benefit just isn't there. We're spending more money reviewing than potential problems, because if one got through with a problem, and we lost in court and say, we thought it should be 2, and they thought it should be 4, we've lost $2,000, but if we spend $25,000 with the staff time.
Right, I mean, but if you're from a purchasing perspective, you're matching those at the end.
Well, we're matching them at the PO or at the payment.
Right.
And
I mean, that element, that control is there.
We're going to put in, well, that's one of the discussions here we're right now putting in. We've always kept them with the PO or the payment. We're actually going to set up, we're trying to set up the Munis contract module and sign numbers to them.
Gotcha.
That way we can trace them back and have an index of them.
So you'll just articulate that through a policy in terms of what the contract owner is responsible for?
Yeah, that's what we're saying. We'd like for Mr. Sittler work and bring back a policy next month. It's just a committee could go ahead and run it back to commission.
Well, we would, I mean, my ruthers would be to see the policy before we approve the move on the authorization level.
Right, and it's kind of the gist of what I just said, but you don't have it in front of you.
Gotcha, yeah. All right.
So can we just bring one back next month?
Yep.
And I have a slight question. Are we using boilerplate contracts for some of these things, or?
We don't generally create the contracts. I'm reviewing contracts from the vendor, and, which is customary, because they're the ones trying to shield themselves. So
Right.
that's what I'm having to go through, so I'm not looking at the same thing twice.
The biggest one we see is hold harmless or multi-year contracts that's not subject to appropriation.
I understand that.
They're not subject to appropriation to require county commission to approve. That's another one we need to probably put on their file. And that's the one we run into the most. You'll go back and you'll have a sales, but if you hit the terms and conditions, it'll end up being a 36-month agreement for payment, so it's what we're running into right now.
Okay.
David, do we, on this whole harmless, I know, like, for instance, us, like, we try not to sign anything as a whole harmless.
We don't, because there's an AG opinion that says that that's extending the full faith and credit of the county. So the only way we would do it is county commission approve that. But right now, we just refuse hold harmless.
Yeah, that's what we did.
And that's why we wanted the policy for them to work for all those.
Any further discussion? All right, that was a follow-up. Eric and Dave are going to work on what that policy would look like, increasing, I think I've got 5,000. Is that the request at this point?
Yes.
Okay. And if we could get any, I guess, numbers behind that of how many, just estimate, how many contracts and time savings.
Well, the total number, something that forms a contract every year is probably well into the thousands right now.
Okay.
You always start
As far as man hours, yeah.
No, I mean contracts. I mean, we're getting to them. They're doing all the payments that we got, and they've got some kind of contractor.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of them, so. Yeah, but I think the $5,000 and the 5 board points for the departments, and then copies of finances.
Okay. And just for my knowledge, this would not just be for the legal department, this would be for all departments?
Well, you would recommend it to the county commission for a countywide policy.
Okay, countywide policy change, not just for the legal
Right,
department.
because the $1,000 is for all contractors with the legal.
That's, well, as soon as you said thousands, I was like,
Oh, yeah, this is for every one that goes through the office. So you got,
gotcha.
yeah, we've got thousands upon thousands of payments. And that number may be higher or low, I don't know, we'd be able to say without filling our payments. I mean, we'd have to eliminate, we've done the payments, so, yeah, it's hard to come by. I think we'd hope to, we just know it's an increasing number and it's straining them on their end and us on our end too to get them through it.
Yeah, and also to Todd's point, if there's any controls we can think through.
And that'll be discussed in here with the government's contract management liability.
All right. Moving on, report of the trustee.
Okay, but David asked for me to attend this meeting.
That's a request.
Okay.
I think it was a request about how the investments were being chosen, and it may be best addressed. And when I get to my report, I may go out of order, because we actually have the 2012 Act Investment Committee and authorized investments. I could go over those at the same time if you want me to.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. And,
I had an actual updated,
okay, that
List.
maybe answers my question.
I only ran like half a dozen copies, but it's got the most recent
Okay.
rates and everything.
I think his question was on how, the big question, if I recall from the minutes, was how was the investment selected, and I was about 90% sure how you were selecting, but I didn't want to state. I think that's what
We
was
send
asked.
out, I send out an email to all of our local banks that we do business with. We have great working relationships with just about all of them. And take bids on our funds, and whoever gives me the best deal, that's who gets the money.
So now when you say deal, can you define what deal means?
Well, whoever gives me the best rate and the best terms. Generally, if it's a CD, they might give me a rate for 6 months and another rate for 12 months. Generally, the longer the term, the higher the rate is. And then there's different amounts. It's usually after we get some excess funds, because we have to wait till, the account starts getting built back up from property tax collections. And then we place our money. We've got several money markets, some of that's bond money, and
We have to watch that closely. David can tell you about that.
On the money market, we match them with the disbursement from the bond because we got to do arbitrage yield calculations for those. So that's how those are matched. If they're taken from the inception and then the account's maintained till the bonds are closed.
And the bid process that you mentioned, is
Yes.
that memorialized and you've got records that indicate
Yes.
that?
Mhm.
Okay. Is that reviewed in terms of compliance by anybody?
She does those herself. We don't have a investment committee, but also, the one you asked about last month, the bank account, it's actually bid on each term. And there's
Yeah,
some
our main
statutory
operating
requirements on
public
that.
funds account, I have to review our banking for the term. And I send out emails asking for, what the banks would be offering. I review those, bids, I guess you would call them. And if what we're earning at the time and everything that's included with that, is still superior, we can keep it. If this last time, we've had our main public funds account with First Horizon Bank for 30-something years through 3 trustees back. And, they had always given us the best deal on our public funds account. This last time, I had several very aggressive offers, and so we did a formal RFP and opened the bids and reviewed them, and Pinnacle Bank actually beat everybody. And so we had to change our public funds account to Pinnacle. And so far, we're doing great with it. I think right now, we're getting $538 on the public funds account.
And you've got two, this is on the October balance sheet, you've got First Horizon Bank that was $66 million and Pinnacle at $46 million. And those are two which is considered your day-to-day account for?
Yes, we've switched all of our, collections all of our collections from property tax and all the other departments now are received and sent to Pinnacle. We still have quite a bit of funds in First Horizon that are still there. They do collect property taxes for us as well, so there is money continually going into First Horizon as well.
Mr. Kerr, we did work, or me and the trustee did work on that particular bid together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was it had cost, and based on different cutoff levels, it had prime rates and various other offers that were offering, so we did a very, I guess, in-depth calculation on that, plus the cost of switching accounts to determine the Pinnacle was our best aid. So that one we did do quite a bit of work on.
Yeah, just two final questions. At the last meeting, Cindy, we had talked about those two accounts. At least on your balance sheet, it doesn't indicate that at least there's no interest rate articulated on those two accounts.
Oh, okay.
Do we get return, are those in actively invested accounts?
Yes, they've got, let's see.
They get prime for it.
Oh, okay.
Those are the ones
Well, we
based
can
on
start
prime.
adding that. Right now, Pinnacle's getting $538. Did you get a new updated sheet here?
They get prime, don't they, Cindy, based on?
And I don't think it's on, these are just investments, not our operating accounts, but the, Pinnacle's getting $538 and First Horizon's getting $545. I'd have to look, I can't remember.
I think they get those rates based on so many dollars are at prime plus and so many dollars at prime. After we keep so many there, it goes to prime minus,
Yeah.
And then they have a sweep account, they sweep it in and out each night to pay less interest on it. So that 5.4 is sort of what it is.
Yeah, and it would be helpful if you could add that.
We had to look
That
at
way,
them.
it's just transparent. Last question, I promise. All of these banks that you've got, is there some kind of stress test on these banks? Do we know that these banks are not at risk of collapsing?
No, they are all in the collateral pool. We will not put money in a bank that's not in the collateral pool. That way it's secured at 105%, I think.
And who secures that?
The state.
The state.
The state. The state has to do it, or they have to have securities in the county's name at certain quality, or it can be the investment pool. It's got to be one or the other, and then we've
So
got to
that we
identify.
make sure all the things are good.
And that's a statutory requirement for all counties in Tennessee.
One question. All of these right here are short-term. Have we made any decisions as to whether we would go long-term?
You can, and that's why we've got this statute on acceptable investments. The things you can invest over 2 years has to be basically sales or certain things, and it also can't be more than 20% of your idle funds or of your smallest fund over the past year or at the time of the investment. And we have a fund called the Courthouse Jail Maintenance Fund that has about $300,000 in it. So anything over 5 years would be somewhere below $60,000, over 2 years, I'm sorry. And if you read through, there's a whole lot of limits, and with the feds losing AAA rating by the other day, or the other month, whenever, several of these investments of theirs are no longer, because we got a letter the other day reminding us of the statutory requirements. If you read back in the statutes, they've got to be the best rating by 2 nationally recognized, and they're not. So they're kicked out. So right now, we're very limited on what you can do on time and time. And I included those down here later for you guys. You probably want to spend some time at home going through them because they're very convoluted and twisted. You have to read back and forth on it a bunch of times to make sense out of it. That one at the top, I was looking at, for sure. The cash you keep in, that's because we keep those accounts, that's because that's where you take taxes.
Right, they collect property taxes for us. We have accounts at all of those banks. It's actually very helpful because it keeps a lot of the traffic out of the office when we're just playing.
Okay.
And it, of course, helps the banks too. Use that money as they take payments, and every 3 days they mail us the paperwork so that we can process it in the system. And then we transfer them into the office.
Well, you don't have to
Under
drive
the
out of
operating.
this office. Gotcha. You can
And then a lot
drive
of
on this
people are
bank.
afraid of the mail now, so.
So basically, you can drive to one of those accounts and pay your property taxes. It's a big, they do it for nothing
It's
pretty much.
very convenient for the people that live like in Portland and Westmoreland and Lighthouse and Louisville. They can just go to the bank and pay the taxes, and the bank will get paid for it and they process it.
Okay. And you can also pay online,
And you can pay online.
but there's a fee on it,
Yes.
Yeah, you got to use a credit card or something of that nature.
And then we get all the big mortgage payments in December because they hold on to your money for the very last paycheck.
Before they come to work.
Yeah.
Or right before the taxes, they go for taxes. They go in Blakely in March.
So David, let me ask you on this investment committee, what are the next steps? I mean, do you have a charter in place, or is that something you're going to develop? Or?
It's under B. The statute says the county commission can form an investment committee, so basically what you do is recommend them form an investment committee. The 2012 Act says that this committee forms the policies and procedures for it, and then the authorized investments are attached to it, too. It tells you what you can invest in for lengths and amounts. So basically, you would form a committee to work with the trustee for investing, but as we're saying right now, your investments are really limited pretty much to those CDs, the state investment pool, money market accounts, and there's probably a few others, but they've got to be, if you look, they're going to be AAA rated, so we'd actually have to go out and look at all those investments.
When it comes to bonds, though, I mean, that's a little different portfolio, right? So,
Buy bonds at the state.
yeah. So, are the rules the same in terms of looking at liquidity, term, and duration of the bond, and then the premium, I mean, is that part of the portfolio that you bid those bonds out like you do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Whenever they issue the bond.
She hasn't bought any bonds, that's what I'm saying, we're not buying any state, she's not buying
Oh, I
investments
thought
in
you
any.
were talking- oh.
Like, you can buy certain bonds, but she's not bought any of those.
Now, my question is just process.
We were issuing bonds or
Correct,
bonds?
issuing
The
bonds.
process to go through to get a bond. Do
Oh,
you go
when
through the
when you
same-
issue a bond or when you
Yes.
bond? When we issue a bond, it gives me finance in the mayor.
Yeah, okay.
So we will actually hire a financial advisor and we'll actually do sealed bids on the bond and get, council involved. We'll go out and get the lowest true interest cost. So generally, all of our bonds for several years have had significant premiums because the true interest cost most of the time comes in lower with the premiums involved.
So we should invest in an advisor to do that?
Yes, because they actually have this, and we wouldn't want to buy the software, it's very expensive. Yeah. We outsource that work, and I think every county in the state does. I would not recommend trying to do that in-house. Probably wouldn't work out well for cost. But you can buy certain bonds too, I thought that might be, and they're under that statute, under page 35 to 37, which ones you can and can't, for what length.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Cindy.
Since we still have the trustee here, and if you're okay with it, do you want me to go down to the section B under my report, page 33, 34, and 35 and 37? We can just briefly go through those, that way I'm sure she may not want to be here for the whole discussion. If that's okay with the committee members. And I try to just attach all the pertinent stuff, and this is what I looked at for the investment committee, is your 2012 Act. It says, the 2012 Finance Committee shall recommend policies and procedures for cash management and investment of idle cash funds as prescribed by law. Such recommendations shall be approved by the majority vote of the county legislative body. And if you go to the following page, which is on the back of mine, I think it's probably the same way. It actually says Committee on Investments, and it goes in it says for the purpose, the county legislative body of several counties may appoint a committee with authority to designate the types of investments and amounts of those investments. And I believe it says they don't have to be commissioners directly on but they may appoint an investment committee. So basically, it would come through this committee recommending the county commission appointing whoever they appointed.
So are you looking for a motion to do that?
If you want to go forward, you probably need to create a resolution for them to create an investment committee, and then you need to have them, or you have a recommendation of what's going to constitute who's in the investment committee.
So I'll make the recommendation.
Any further discussion on this topic? I just had one question. Are there any other counties that currently have an investment committee that you can think of?
I'm sure they do. I could go out and call, we could have some call tomorrow. We don't. That's something we haven't been asked before, so I haven't gone out and
Okay.
really pulled it.
Yeah. I mean, I know we're in a unique time where money's starting to make money again, and I want to be financially responsible with that. At the same time, if we're limited in the scope of what we can purchase and, got a good handle on the economics behind it, adding another committee may not be the right move, so. But I'm
I
good
did
with it.
speak with one of my bankers today, and she told me that it looks like things are going to be level for a little while,
Okay.
because the last meeting said to not increase the interest rate,
Okay.
which they had to do because of inflation, but they did not do an increase, so she feels like it might stay level for a little while,
Okay.
unless some major catastrophe.
Would you maybe want to put this on all business for next month and give all the committee members time to think? And we'll also go back and determine, my understanding is I'll have to go back and verify if they don't have to be members of the commission. So if that's correct, then technically this committee plus the trustee could be your investment committee. But that may be something we want to go back and research 100% to make sure. It doesn't really say here, it says the county legislative body shall appoint. And there's a section for the state that we pulled out.
At the next meeting, you come back with a recommendation on who and how this is formed.
We'll determine who can be in there, and the next month, you've got to be thinking if you're going to do this. Since you would probably not want to form another committee, it may be best to make the financial management committee, the investment committee, and possibly include the trustee. I don't know if you want to consider that or not. The 12 Act plus the trustee, I don't know.
And if we're doing that, and I do like that idea, can we have something from legal as far as resolution of the Cam2 legislation? So if we meet in December, we can form the committee that Mr. Lawrence talking about, because we have a resolution handoff to legislation there to approve.
I'm about 100% sure on that. I just want Eric to verify that it can be anybody. That it can be anybody.
Ask that one more time.
I was just simply asking, I like the idea of this committee being the investment committee. I was just wondering if your office could draft us up a resolution to look at next month in December when we, if
Yes.
we can do it, we bring the draft back.
Yeah, I've already got that down to do.
Thank you.
And then your next one is actually the authorized investments. If you look, it's quite a long statute. It has a lot of limitations, and that's maybe something you want to look at before the next meeting. Because there's certain things like if you look, certain of the investments there have to be AAA, certain investments at the Fed have to be the highest rated by 2 nationally recognized rating agencies, and I think there's 3 actually rated, but 2 of the 3. So there's a whole lot of requirements, and then there's also, as you're saying, looking back at the subsection, maybe when you come back for questions for us to answer, like if you go to page, the second page of the actual investment one, and you look at C1, that's where it limits what you can, your time you can invest. It says not more than 20% of the lowest idle fund balance in the past 5 years, or 20% of idle funds available at the same investment, whichever is less. Rated investment maturities greater than 2 years, but not greater than 5. So it limits you down to 5 right there. So you couldn't have anything past 5 for 60, and then there's a whole bunch of limitings between that gauge too. And then you go back up here and it talks about sales and other one-time monies and bonds. And the reason on the bonds is we leave them in the money market versus moving. We need to trace them. Plus, if we earn excess, it gets rebated to the IRS anyway.
If we buy longer, this may be a silly question, if we buy longer duration bonds that are more than 5 years but can call or can sell them, is that considered a buy, or is that just like a CD?
Maturity is what it says. It says, I think it says maturity of, so that would be final maturity because we had that.
Okay.
Which is your less invested 2 years, not greater than 5 from the investment. I believe it was 5 because I think we actually, when we were looking at this several years ago, we were discussing that, and I think the consensus was that it would be a final maturity on the bond.
Okay. Not just being, not being.
Not being callable,
Okay.
right, if it was callable, and then, same time if you buy.
Sellable, yeah. Just
Well, you could sell, most of these bonds you could sell anytime anyway, you could sell back on the
That's what I
market.
mean, yeah. The CDs are the only ones that actually have like a fixed term.
But we can look at that and kind of
Okay.
consult with county technical, what their thought process in the state, because I believe the director of local finance we worked with last time, they have to approve some of these. Whether they're off, for a better word, polices this, unless it's changed, because I worked with them last time quite a bit. We were looking at the hospital sale proceeds to see what could be done with it, and we determined it was so restricted that it wasn't feasible for that $30 million to actually go anywhere that could make any funds pass for CD, was what it ended up being at the end of the day. We spent, I don't know, several meetings on it. But any of the questions you got, if you can send them to me, I can forward them on to technical and work with Eric and try to figure their answers out, or move on forward with this.
Just more process question, David, on the authorized investments. Do you envision this being memorialized in the policy that we would have as an investment committee?
I think that's what we would do, try to simplify it and go back and calculate the 20%, find out what falls into the gaps, and then, right now it talks about some federal investments with being rated by two of them at the highest, which is no longer the case anymore because the feds themselves don't have a AAA rating, and I think that's the letter we got the other day was about those, if I'm not mistaken. So there's several investments we can't do because of what happened with the federal government and their rating. made it even more difficult. And so the good thing is we didn't have any of them at the time when that happened, because we would have got rid of them.
David, I was just noticing here under C3, it says that the investment committee may approve investment with maturities of greater than 5 years.
But there's limits on down there what those files are, yeah.
The dollar amount?
No, if you go on down there, yeah, but if they're over that, they're limited on which ones we can and how much and what balances. Let me find that. You gotta read the whole section through the thing, balances around everywhere. I remember this thing from years ago, we spent time on it. Let me find it, pull it back out here. Share my page. What page is it on? Page 35. Which one was you talking about, Bob? C3?
Well, it's under C3.
It says also approved by the comptroller of the treasury or designated individual, son shall submit to the director in writing an unusual occurrence that generated the idle funds. So if you're gonna do that, you actually had to have some unusual occurrence if you're gonna be investing those. Because earlier sections cover sales and a whole bunch of stuff, so it's gonna have to be some kind of legal settlement or something unusual.
So if you had something you had to pay in 10 years, and you needed to put the money aside for 10 years.
It's gonna have to be something very unusual, and they're gonna have to approve it, because when we started talking to them years ago about the hospital sale, because it talks about sales, and I think that was even before Mr. Langford was on the commission, I believe. It's been at least 10 years ago. They would not, they told us they absolutely would not at the time approve investments past 5 years for us, because we didn't have that circumstance. It has to be unusual. That sale of the hospital proceeds fall back under sales. And then they also told us our other limiting factor was the section C1. It says between 2 and 5 is 20% of the lowest idle fund, which would be courthouse and jail maintenance fund. So anything 2 to 5 is going to be below $60,000. That puts you back to 2. So the majority of our funds are going to be held back at 2 years as far as investments go. And then we'll have to pull ratings for all the ones we do. Several ones have to pull ratings and see what they qualify as. So if you find an investment that looks good, then the problem is I don't think we're going to get a lot of length on a lot of these.
I mean, it refers back to A2, where it says the idle county funds derived from sales of assets, settlements, or other infrequent or unusual occurrences shall be invested. Yeah, and to me, that doesn't make it sound like we've got some oddball situation going on. It's just that we've got this money that's sitting here.
But it has to be it has to be something unusual to do past 5 years. Very, very unusual. They told me maybe if we had a court settlement or whatever, give me some really far out examples, because that statute says it has to be approved by the comptroller. Now, if we work out good policies and we send them in, they may do something different, but that's something we'll have to get their approval. And then the other thing, you've got to realize that if we buy some of these bonds, they're actually going to have to be shown at fair value. So based on market changes and interest rates, you may show unrealized gains and losses. So your financial statements, if we invested $30 million and interest rates worked against us, we could end up showing an unrealized gain or loss on our financials of $100,000, which was, didn't have to footnote it, which would be something you guys would have to explain. It'd be kind of hard to. That's something you run into too, just to make you aware of it under GAAP. It gets very. Because, you know, these really short terms like Cindy's buying don't have to be shown at market value. I think that's one of their advantages.
These large amounts, you can give it a good interest rate, but
the length.
it's nice to get something.
The other thing's killing you. Yours are collateralized. We could go to an online bank and find better rates than Cindy's got, but they wouldn't be collateralized, and we'd have to get them collateralized, which would bring down the yield. So her yields are good. The reason they're lower than some of the stuff you see is that, and the other thing, some of the online banks, we'd have to see if they're part of the investment for actually, that's where we're
I mean, I'm just looking at some of these amounts, you know, they're just block amounts, 10,000 or 10 million, 5 million, something like that.
Back in 08, 09, the weird circumstance happened where we couldn't actually find banks that would take our cash for investment. They were leaving the bank account for no reason.
Oh, my gosh.
it was very, we would call them and
It cost them more.
try to get them to bid, and they're saying, we don't want your funds right now, for a while there. So right now, we're in a good situation, but I'm not sure, like, if you look online, I'm sure you can find online banks with that rate, but they're not collateralized. If they are, it's gonna keep those rates down. And if we can find them collateralized, they may be better, but that's something we'd have to research heavily. Because, usually your online banks are cheaper because they have no storefronts or no banks. And that's something, Cindy, I'm sure she'd be happy to look at, but that's something at the same time, she's wanting the 105%, well, it's gotta be in the collateral pool, or they gotta be 105%, and I think they've gotta be in the county's names and as a certain type of investment. But Cindy may remember off the top of her head, but I can't remember the exact details, that's the gist of it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I think we've got a follow-up for Eric to bring a draft resolution to the December meeting, and we'll continue the conversation then.
Let me go back to, let's go A,
And if I can, if we're finished with the trustees, can we,
well, that's what I was going to do, that's what my purpose was to do.
I know, so now.
I thought she would just slip out after that, to be honest.
Thank you for your time, Cindy.
You're very welcome.
And since these are all under my report, since we've got some of the EMS people here, can we actually talk about 41 and 46? Yep. Okay. EMS has had a lot of turnover in staff. They sent, I think, 4 pieces of equipment to a vendor. They didn't realize at the time that the vendor actually went bankrupt somewhere back in 2021. When they were reporting them to us as fixed assets, they inadvertently didn't realize those assets were no longer here. They've reported them to this year, so what I'm requesting, because, the assets probably had a 5-year life, they were 2.5, but they had issues. They said they were non-repairable, we don't know if that's 100% true, but where I'm at right now, we've got assets that need to be removed from our books, so what I'm asking for this committee to recommend to the county commission to surplus these assets as lost. Talking to Eric and Steve, at this point, there's no chance of getting them back. They have an undeterminable market value, and there's been no theft or anything of that nature. It's basically they didn't realize the company, they found the letter now, the asset's gone, and they didn't realize they just hadn't been reported. So what I'm asking for this committee to send next month to county, or to the legislative committee, a recommendation to the legislative committee to declare these lost and remove them from books.
So are they 100% appreciated?
We wrote the rest of them off this year. They were getting pretty close, so we just went ahead and removed them from our books at this point, but we need some kind of
What was the original value of these?
They were 37, and we have an estimated 5-year life. They were 2.5 years out. They sent them to the vendor. I think there was like 2 of them had the same issues and maybe 2 more issues. The vendor said they were non-repairable. So at that point, the commission may have wanted to surplus them versus sending them back, but at this point, we're 2 years down the road, so we just need some way to get them off our books. We just need to surplus them out of there.
Is this the same vendor that doesn't operate anymore?
Yeah, the one went bankrupt.
Yeah, that's the other problem, the vendor ceased to exist.
In 21, so those have been sold or melted down or...
That are no longer being made for the compression, so that's correct.
Same ones that were replaced.
Yeah, that's what, I remember that discussion when we were budget, but
We're just asking for you guys to give a recommendation on the legislative to go into the commission to write these things off.
Well, yeah, I'm there, I'm doing that. I think it would be helpful to articulate what the original value of these assets were, and the fact that
$37,000.
they're down to nothing.
37 at the time they sent them, they would have been, 18, but they had repairs. Even if they were repairable, you're talking 4, 5, 6, so that was about 13. And as I'm saying, they were telling these guys that some of the parts, like, you look at one on the face, it looks repairable, say cable, but my understanding is some of the parts that hook the cable, whatever, is no longer made. So the things were basically junk. So what happened is they just missed sending it up to us and reporting to the commission at the time that they were, for better word, junk or salvage. So we're just asking for that to be done now.
Does this happen a lot?
No. It rarely happens. We've had other ones that they've been completely depreciated, and we could figure out what happened to them. They were basically broken, and not of the original value.
as I remember, there was a situation where they were looking for other people to make the belts, but then they wouldn't accept the liability to,
And another thing, the EMS has a lot of equipment and a lot of ambulances, so when they report this every year, we ask them to report deletions, ads, and whatever, because this one was shipped off versus surplus through the usual process, they missed it. And then when our person started asking where was it surplus or lost, they went back and looked at the records and figured out it was lost back in 21. So we're just asking to basically dispose of it now. Probably the same outcome. We just need to get it off the books though.
We do have a
Chairman, I'll
motion.
second the motion on the floor.
All right. Any further discussion? We've got a motion and a second.
You need a second?
Oh, we got a second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, send it to commission.
The next item is page, that way they ain't messed on it.
It's going to legislative, it's going to legislative.
Oh, sorry, send it to us.
Yeah.
Well, then there's the other one about the receivables, if you want me to mention that, since Mr. Foster's here, but he wasn't here at the time, but we'll talk about it afterwards, he's not. But, let's see. Page 6 through 19 is just the original 2012 Act, but everybody will have a copy, because I've had questions about when it was adopted and written, so I've tried to include that. And then on page 20 through 25 is the 2019 amendment. And basically what it did was made the schools optional, and as long as we're trying to progress toward implementation of the remaining sections, then we will not be in non-compliance. We just need to keep forward. It says basically two things. The committee will monitor, and we'll keep moving forward. We originally did an implementation plan, but I brought you a kind of a shortened, modified version here that should keep us in compliance and some kind of recommendations. But if everybody's good with item A, 1, and 2, I'll go ahead and go to item 3.
I'm good.
Okay. What it does is the same thing Todd asked for last month. First, it goes through here, and if you go on back here, it'll start, when we get to it, it'll start prioritizing your goals. But at the beginning, if you look, I went back, and what I've done is I try to prioritize the goals, tell you everything that we need to implement at this point, and give you some decent estimates, because we still got to talk to the vendor about certain things, of when it would take to get the full act in. If you look on the very first two paragraphs, it's basically just the verbiage telling you the things I just told you and including the list. Section 21 is the one I was telling you about, where it says as long as this committee is evaluating it, and we're trying to work forward to it internally and through this committee, then we won't be in violation. But I think we have to be at least trying to move forward on a decent pace. And that's what I think this memo will help with.
That's one of the things that's kind of bothering me. This is 11 years now.
It started in 2012 with the adoption. At the time, it included the school, and we went through several things, and we actually had the software in part of the school. At the time, they decided to temporarily bring the school back, and then there was a discussion in 2019, because things just kept carrying on, that it may be better to make the schools optional to go ahead and do the rest of it, and give us a little longer time frame, because we're doing a lot of software. Well, at that time, in 2019, right after that COVID happened, so it kind of threw the committees. We quit meeting, committees quit meeting because everybody was masking up and remotely. So it slowed everything down. So now COVID's gone. We got the committee willing to start looking. So I think it's the time to start trying to move forward and probably complete the next thing anywhere from 1.5 to 2 years. And that would be, and there's several pieces here, because what you've really got is a private active full-on ERP system. It's all everything but the schools, and it's a full-on ERP where everything will be to the most feasible possible electronic. And I can talk about some of the limitations on that tonight, because there's some statutory limitations, but I can kind of go through those tonight with you too. The first thing is, we think to move forward on this, we're going to need one additional full-time staff member. And where the full-time staff member would be is when we transition Highway over to do their bidding and to do their purchasing. It would be a half a person. We think it would be a half a person if we moved the bid limit from $10,000 to $25,000. Because right now we have a lot of bids that would get rid of some of the smaller dollar bids. What we could do is one of two things. Move it. I think we should just move it on to 25. We could require quotes from 10 to 25, but in the past, the quotes have been about as much as getting bids when you go into it. Because most of these departments have very few funds, so they're going to be calling anyway, and then we look at the quotes. Item number 2, when we did do that, if we do that, we could eliminate about $12,000 of consulting fees. Right now, we've been trying to use consultants to help implement the ERP system, the Kronos portion. A couple of things we run into is the amount of internal time we're spending. It about takes the same amount of time, plus the consultants are busy, so they're not necessarily available. Also, our understanding is we do quite a bit of overtime in finance. If we pulled the additional person in, we would try to alleviate about $5,000 of that overtime. Right now, we're running pretty heavy on, and the last year, turnover in finance has been reasonably good, I'd say last year, before that was pretty bad. Item number 2, I would recommend myself, because I can be the purchasing agent or recommending one of the deputies in my office. My recommendation would be to make one of the deputies a purchasing agent. And I've got one selected up there that would be a good purchasing agent. And then also put the half-time, the other half of that person half-time under this person. Item number 3 is
David, would that be a full-time position?
full-time split half and half between those two duties, yeah. Originally, I said a full-time for the purchasing, but if we're going to lower the bid limit, I think we could get by with a half a person. And we'll come back and let the committee know how that's going. I think when we get all this implementation done, our staffing with an additional person will be fine, but I think over the next several years, we're still going to be running a lot of comp and overtime because implementations, you got your regular job and a new job. And you can't let the regular ones fall because that's worse than letting the implementation fall. Because you can day-to-day don't happen, you don't pay taxes, or there's been instances of that. That's why we're slow walking it. We prioritize day-to-day over the implementation. And it's very important, but we got to make sure it happens too.
Just a quick, I think it looks like it's section 11, not section 10.
I'm sorry, did I read it too quick?
Oh, I just was looking at the policy, I think, refers to section 11, not section 10.
Over the
Yeah, section 10 is school finance structure, section 11 is purchasing agent.
sorry, I grabbed the wrong one, didn't I? I put that through for that real quick.
Oh, I'm just looking at this, which one are you looking at?
Oh, yeah, it should be 11. The private act would be right. Probably ran through it real quick, I was trying to refer.
No worries, I was just trying to read it while you were going through it.
I quoted it though. But the second thing would be, we need this committee to basically send their recommendation back to the subcommittee for full implementation. Basically this, with any amendments tonight, send over to the subcommittee to start working on all the policies that we need to work on slowly. Probably purchasing first, and then as I mentioned down through here, we need to adopt some timekeeping policies for the chrono system. We have none of those right now. We went to a completely electronic and several departments. We have personnel policies, but there needs to be some other policies. And kind of like something I was talking to Ms. Commissioner Boyd this evening, none of the personnel policies system-wide addresses how you treat exempt employees. That may be something that needs to be looked at too. You don't want to destroy their exemption, but all your exempt employees other than elected or like elected officials or the clerk of master or the administrator of elections on sick and vacation time. So you need some kind of, that doesn't destroy their exemption, some kind of reasonable policy of how that's handled. Because if you ask 5 different exempt people, you're going to get 5 different answers, because I've asked them. And they're all doing it different.
And if you can stop just for a moment with the subcommittee, I think we've touched on it a couple of times. I was just wondering, I assume as chairman you would call the subcommittee because they don't meet routinely.
Yeah, I think we're waiting on all this to get
So at the end of this meeting, today we'll...
And me and Toby met this morning. We've been kind of tied up, our schedules are busy, so yeah, we did meet this morning. We've been talking about it since the last meeting. Things just keeps happening, but
I was thinking about the policy committee.
yeah, so we need to meet. The policy subcommittee needs to meet.
So I was just asking, is that December or January? What are we thinking?
First of the other one, yeah.
Well, December will be hard with everybody on
Christmas.
Christmas. Probably want to do it January. Okay. Because I can just try to coordinate meetings in December before, and they don't work out well with 5 people. And then number 2 is, just like she mentioned right now, it's a hard change to change people's pay cycle, but the first thing, we've looked at the chrono system, and we can set up the separation. We want the policy to come back from the policy subcommittee and you guys that any new full-time employees will require a reasonable holdback period of 5 to 7 days. So like if your existing employees will keep doing the way we're doing it, even though it's painful for a while, we figure out what to do. But the new ones, we want to get a holdback policy starting as soon as they're on chronos. And then the other thing is, at some point, we're actually paying people on Friday for Thursday. We probably need to move that back to Friday. Friday, even though it's not a huge change, it's still a little bit of a change toward the right direction. Because we used to have checks that were paper and direct deposit. If your direct deposit got paid a day after. And then county commission adopted policy countywide that it all has to be direct deposit because of the cost and the issue. So that was kind of an old thing that was done at one point to incentivize everybody to do direct deposit. And we're 100% direct deposit. We don't do checks anymore. Unless they steal your account or something temporary will do.
I want to ask the Mayor, what do you think about moving it one day to Friday? I mean, is that going to be a big disruption?
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah. What's the best way to communicate that?
Just send a communication out on payroll.
We'll send out payroll.
You have a point in time.
Yeah, give them a time that, hey, it's not going to be in your account on Thursdays anymore, it's going to be on Fridays. And they just make adjustments.
Yeah.
What I'd recommend is immediately adopting the policy for as soon as you go to Kronos and the ones that they're required to have, and several of them are already on there, like my office, that all the new employees have to have a holdback and we'll start, and they send up the new employees, we'll hold them back a week. So instead of getting paid that Friday, they get paid the next automatically, so it'll be a week holdback.
How many total employees do we have right now?
With part-time, it's somewhere around 1,000. Yeah.
And so your thought is to transition the new ones in terms of not an advance pay, it's more of a retrospective pay?
Sheriff, EMS, highway, they already have holdbacks, and there's a few others.
Okay.
But then you've got about, I would say, anywhere from 100 to 250, somewhere in that range, or do not have holdbacks.
The fact that you would have two different ways that you pay your employees, does that create an issue?
Well, right now, the issues we've got is that's one, and dividing these on Kronos won't be an issue. We've already looked at that, but we have several issues right now because you have multiple personnel policies, and multiple personnel policies have different end and start days. So they all get paid the same time, but there's a different amount of holdbacks for the ones that are held back, and even the advancements. So some start on Saturday, some start on Friday, some start at Wednesday at noon. So we have several personnel policies, and they all vary.
Well, I mean, just having been in the corporate world for a year or two, just changing the pay schedule itself can be disruptive. And the fact that you'll have employees getting paid on two different methods, I just think that needs to be clearly articulated in terms of how you plan to transition that over time.
It would be like, I think right now, all part-time are held back, period. So like if I hired a part-time person in my office, it would be a week hold back. All we've got to do is start treating them brand new full-time the same way, and we tell them that at orientation.
Well, I agree that that's the way to do it on a prospective basis, but I think in this interim period, that's going to...
Well, we orient all the new employees, so we would tell the news that came in about that. Like we do the payroll, we do the orientation upstairs, and we enroll them. The thing was, we would just say, hey, there's a week in the requirement to hold back. And that would only be new ones, so the existing ones we're going to leave as is, because even transitioning to Friday, I think that should happen, but I think that should happen after we get everybody on Friday.
Dr. Langford, what do we do at the schools? Do we do that same policy at the schools? Or?
We have a variety of employees, obviously, but our pay cycle's the same, so we don't have the two. We just have one policy for everything on that.
Yeah.
And, we run the nature of teacher contracts. It depends on where we start school. We're bound by that by law in terms of, what the state says. So we're a little bit behind at the start of the year, but then we're a little bit ahead by the end of the year in terms of, like, if somebody quit, came and talked for a week or two and then quit.
So you're like your classified employees. Do you pay them on a retrospective or prospective basis?
So if it's, no, it's retrospective. Like, teachers, like, because they're on a 10-month contract that's paid over 12 months, that's a little different because, they're basically spreading their pay. We're dividing by 12 instead of by 10. Like if you went from a 10-month job to an 11, like if you went from a teacher to an assistant principal, you would get an extra check because you basically completed your 10-month contract, but it was spread out over 2 months before you're starting. Our 12-month employees are paid real time, but 10 and 11, it's a little bit different.
But below those contracted employees, your classified employees that are paid hourly, those are paid in the way that David's trying to move the county.
Right. Yeah, we do a time sheet and pay off that.
Should have never been set up that way, but it's very painful. The least painful is to get your new employees, because it'll never affect their pay. They know they got to hold back like every other employee. do those, and that's what I was saying, I had the same spiel almost 14 years ago, so we were talking about it the other day, if we'd have done it then, everybody in legal would have a holdback, everybody in the mayor's office would, everybody in IT would, but at the time I had the same, but I think this is the least painful, that they had a complete kickback about holding back and moving it. The number two they had was it was going to be hard to keep up with, but if you're going to the Chrono system where the timesheets match up for that group, it's going to get rid of that issue and get a date specific on them. So I think right now is the opportunity for the ones on the Chronos, we declare a date specific, everybody hired after that date's automatically got a holdback. So like if after, let's just say, January 1, and they hire somebody in an office that's already in Chronos, they would just hold back. It's not a holdback office, they would just hold back that person, the new one. When another one came onto the system, then any of their new ones would be held back, just like the part-time. And we do that with part-time anyway. As I'm saying, the majority of our staff are that way because sheriff's number one side is EMS, highways, probably number 3, pretty close if not. Well, ECC and then get highways. And ECC's held back too, which is their consolidated dispatch. So that's one thing I think over time that will alleviate it. The only other way would be to do a holdback, but as you're saying, do you really want to implement a system that's going to help everybody, but at the time hold back the employees because it's going to give a sour taste in some of your employees' mouths? So what you're going to have is you're going to create a very bad environment for the system. That's my only reasoning is I think that's not a good idea. It's going to create that bad feeling for the whole system. When the system came in, I didn't get paid for a week. But if it's a brand new employee, they've got the system on it. Right. And that's the only reason I'm not for doing that.
Are you looking on this Chrono system, are you looking at a full automated system where they use an app to clock in and clock out?
We've got that already. The thing that we're running into right now is we wanted to automate it, even dropping it into units, but we have to do a lot of manipulation, and the reason that's caused is there's several things. One is these people that aren't held back is a big issue. We have to actually estimate a whole week manually and then put it in there with Excel and upload it. The other issue we've got is if we're saying there's multiple personnel policies, so all the start and end dates vary. So if they've got varying start and end dates, like at the schools, you always are going to have the same one, so you could pull it across.
Right. That makes sense.
We have to massage the stuff quite a bit with checks and balances, which takes a lot of staff time and
I'm thinking with part-time employees and various ones,
Yeah, they're all held back in the part-time, so it's the full-time, about 100 to 250 of them is a real issue, but my thing is if we start now, and it may not happen, well, in the next 10 years, but eventually the people start retiring, and then number two, after the system's several years old, the system won't be tied if you decide to hold back, it'll give a bad taste in the way once you use the system.
Does that create duplicative duties for somebody though?
Upstairs?
To track Chronos on one part of your department and then tracking it?
Well,
I mean, it just seems like to me that if we're going to wait till somebody retires, that doesn't seem too efficient to me.
We've got a system where there'll be, I think there's actually like in different tracking, you have tracking that's based on those, so they'll be in like almost a different department. What we do right now is if you're in this one with no holdback, we'll pull your stuff from Chronos from the week before. You have to tell us if you're a full-time employee by Tuesday, if somebody quits or something, the way we can take the leave, we'll go back and try to recover it. And what we do is we actually have an Excel sheet based on your current pay. It'll estimate your next week, and then we have to adjust it backwards. So basically, it requires a lot of importing, exporting, but there's really, because of the multiple personnel policies and these non-holdbacks, as I'm saying, I understand what you're saying, it's a very big, it's time-consuming, it's expensive for the county, but my concern is anything on change management, if you hold back these 200 employees, they're going to have a bad taste of change management on Chronos, is going to be twice as hard. Again, we go from manual to electronic.
Yeah, I hear you, but I just think that we've got to be thinking about how to transition this sooner than when folks retire. I mean, there are ways that you can hold back a day here or hours here and phase it in over time.
That's what I was thinking about, splitting a week, say, 2.5 days, 3, 2, or something like that, and that way they don't have that bad taste of not being paid for it.
It's not as bad.
If you did that, I would recommend you get everybody on Chronos and get it working, settled, policies all done, and then
I
start
like that
moving.
idea. How
And
soon
then
do
start
we get
moving.
Chronos in?
Well, we're going to go down in here where we're looking at the rest of them.
Everybody else technically had to work a week, before they got paid, so you just do it further in your career.
So your goal would be to transition all employees to this Chronos?
Yes, what's required with the Private Act, and that's what you're going to do.
Right, but I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said that we would not really change the current employees. They would, if they rotate off during retirement or turnover, that's when you would change it. So you're really not planning to transition the current employees onto this.
Yeah, we're gonna transition one just like we've got other ones on there. My whole office is on Chronos, and there's no holdback. So what you do is, if you're a full-time employee, the first week is your actual work. The second work's an estimate based on your, because you know you're making the same amount of hours, same number of weeks. You earn comp or overtime, it'll be handled the next time around if you have that. So basically, the Chronos will track all that. Because when you do Chronos, you've got to do an overtime payout, otherwise it rolls into comp time, so.
So all employees will use Chronos?
Yes, they'll use Chronos. The only question is, it's a lot more labor intensive without the holdback. Up there, and it's got the risk of people being paid that late. We don't get reported time on county.
I'm not sure I'm completely clear in terms of how you're going to handle the existing employees, whether they're going to be over time transitioned into the same, model where they have to, get paid in advance.
Just like in finance, when we went from paper to Chronos, we came in and nobody's pay changed at all. So what we did was we pull, like if you got your weeks with your vacation, everything, you work in Chronos, we pull that first week down. The second week we estimate it. If there's any overtime, for instance, your overtime, you're allowed to carry up to, I think, 240 hours. So it rolls into overtime. We do what's called an overtime payout with approval because they get to the balance. So like when I have some employees with maybe 220 hours, they're going to go up, we're going to pay them comp time or overtime out so they get paid. It comes to the same dollars. So what you're going to do, the only time you end up with an issue is you can't do direct uploads, which takes a lot of time. The other issue is if I have an employee that don't have leave and they quit. Because we send the direct deposit out Wednesday, so I have to know pretty early Tuesday if they quit and don't have leave. Well, sometimes people may quit on Thursday. You may hire a relatively new person, think they're working, they've estimated they're working second week, and then they quit on Wednesday or Tuesday so late that we can't change the direct deposit.
So I've litigated this too much, but at the end of the day, I just need to understand how we're going to transition the existing employees that are not going to phase in over time with the new Chronos.
What I would recommend right now is we find a date specific for the ones on Chronos. All your new hires, being your full-time, have to have a holdback. When you put somebody on Chronos, all the new people automatically have a holdback. The existing one, I think this needs to come back to the commission to determine when and how they want to handle it, but I think it should be after you've implemented the Chronos and have all your policies and everybody's used to it. Then you can separate the two. The Chronos can work that way, just like the manual are. It's just the manual sheet that's going on. Basically, the departments are doing the same thing with Microsoft Excel right now. They're taking 1 week and they're estimating another because they don't know what people will work.
Now, did you give us last meeting how many people are in the advance pay or?
It's somewhere between 100 to 200 or 250. There's not, most of your people aren't because you've got sheriff, EMS, ECC, and highway. Your 4 biggest departments have all got to hold back 2 of those. The 2 biggest ones are already in Chronos. IT's in Chronos, the mayor's office in Chronos, the legal office in Chronos, finance. I think E911 is already. So we have several of the smaller ones. We're going to try to contact the registrar's office, start testing theirs, or we're ready to start testing them. And then trustee just went on recently, she's here now. So we're still moving along slowly, but the thing is when we go, say if we go to circuit or quartermaster next, they have a completely different policy. So where we're planning to go after the registrars contact the libraries, we have some issues about the way they do leave. We've got to figure out how to handle the system, but we're moving us forward slowly, but with the resources we're moving very slowly. We're doing the day-to-day and then grabbing this as much as we can and programming it and working with consultants if we can find them, which we've not had a lot of luck with that. The next one is something that's been discussed is grants, and we'll go through with the sections of it. We were going to implement several years ago, and I think I forwarded somebody an email that asked us where we were at on it, and I can't recall who, but we were going to do what's called a project ledger that basically keeps up with all your grant information as it requires in the Private Act. And I'm still on page 1, and I'll go through those. But basically, that's another one. We are requesting that there be some kind of policy on the departments entering stuff in the project ledger if they have a grant. We have that started, I believe, back in 19 or 20 or 21. And at the time, the office said they didn't have time to deal with it. I think I may have sent this board that email. I think somebody emailed. Then the other one is, if we're gonna move on, we need to update the purchasing policy for the highway department. And these are just the points up here, up at the top still.
If I can step back to the project ledger, you did send me the emails, and I saw that people had training. Would you have to retrain? I
We'll
assume it's
probably
been a
try to
while.
do that internally, because we know how the system works, and we've already got the stuff set up, so kind of ideal, if you look what the 2012 Act says, everything for precision accounting of the grants have to be on the ERP. So what you're asked for from audit a lot of times is you have to have your grant contract. A lot of times they want the application, because the application, some of the contract sometimes refers back to the application occasionally. They do want correspondence from granting agencies, so you need to put those in there. You do need requests for reimbursements in advance, and you do need closure reports. The easiest thing to do, we extend the browser out to the end user with limited, where they can name those attachments in the stand. So, for instance, if they want a budget amendment, they put in their grant contract and application. And then they agree to put in, when they make requests for reimbursements, because right now it happens to trustees' office, we get a deposit. Trustees trying to figure out who it is, we're trying to figure out who it is, and we have to dig around, and we find them, and the department's got the request and never made it up to us. So that's another issue that's going on right now.
Is this project ledger something that the subcommittee will come up with procedures
I would
on
think
how to implement it?
procedures, and then they need to, like, all your procedures ultimately need to go to the county commission, like the way like with purchasing would happen. You guys instruct the subcommittee comes up with the recommendations. You guys take the recommendations, or you amend it how you see fit. You approve it, you send it to county commission, and county commission ultimately approves your policy. That's kind of the way the flow works. This would need to work something similar.
So on the grants themselves, the way you track and research those grants, do you actually look at their 990 to see that it's in good standing?
That would be for nonprofit. You mean nonprofits?
Yeah.
We do nonprofits internally, and that's one thing we do, like Jessica spends a lot of her time on her nonprofits and stuff. So like, for instance, when they send in their 990s and their application, we actually have a project ledger, like each fire department will have a project ledger. They'll have in there their application, their 990 each year, and anything else that they provide as per the policy. The grants we're wanting to do similar to the nonprofits, because she does the nonprofits, but she don't have time to do the nonprofits. We're asking the granting people to scan in their stuff in these project ledgers.
Let me go a little different direction with my question. The 990 itself will tell you a lot about that entity.
The nonprofit?
Yes.
We redid the policy several years ago, and the thing about it, if you don't file a 990, the IRS can remove your nonprofit status on the third year. So when we were doing the policies, I recommended the county commission require a 990. There's a few exemptions. There's a small 990, and also there's a rule if you are a nonprofit closely related to a government, there's some exemptions to filing 990. We have one or two of those, and then we also discovered one of the fire departments is part of the city. But every of their nonprofits right now, except for the one that's part of the city and the closely related, do have 990s filed with us. Because one had to go back and refile all of them.
Yeah, let me keep going here. So on the 990 itself, do you actually do an analysis of the financial stability of that not-for-profit, or are they in good standing before we grant the money back?
It goes to the budget committee to look at the just regular nonprofits, and then there's a charitable allocation committee that looks at all your charitable.
So the budget committee would be doing that?
So they receive the copies of the 990s and everything else. They're required to do one of two things. If they have an audit, they're required to provide it, which would have more detail. If they don't have an audit, they're required to provide a form with some of that information signed by their chief financial. And then the county commission's policy here requires the 990 and additional information on top of that. So there's a pretty good process, but we don't necessarily, they're more looking about, is it a worthy, or do they think it's a project that the county should fund? Like, that's what and they look at the number of people served and the amount of money they have.
I don't believe they look at the 990.
They don't look at the 990, but we do.
I mean, I
have
feel
copies.
comfortable saying they don't look at it.
But we do have copies of it for them.
I don't get it, if you're not gonna look at it, right? I mean,
Well, mine is I require to file because they've got to be a nonprofit, so it's 3 years they haven't filed it, they're no longer.
you're looking more at that piece
Those
versus
are statutory.
the contents of the 990.
That's the same thing, even if they look viable, the county gives them money as a nonprofit, they're not viable, they go broke, we're losing the money anyway. And a lot of these nonprofits, the question is, a lot of them are looking at the nonprofit having a whole lot of money, they probably won't get the money because they don't need it.
Exactly.
So if they look at their finances and they're bad, they're more likely to get it because they need help to get it there anyway. So those
Or they
particular
mismanage their money to get to that point.
but you can't tell that unless somebody tells you. So kind of the thing is, the reason the 990s aren't closely scrutinized or any of that's because it's kind of Nonprofit's almost the opposite of what you would really expect in a lot of these places. Because if you come in, a nonprofit has $2 million and ask you for $2,000, are you gonna give it? But if they come and ask you for $2,500, doing a worthy project, have a accounting on the form for everything and have no money, unless you've got constituents coming and saying they're, having category or something crazy, then you're not gonna know. That's the reason we've never looked at those, because we just don't think there's a benefit, but we can look at a policy if you guys don't think there is. Okay, number 7 was update the actual contract policy to require all the contracts to come to the finance department. We've already discussed that one earlier. Another one is work with this committee to set a tentative schedule for the deadlines to have the timekeeping system for each department, because occasionally when we contact the departments, there's a lot of them, there's a lot of policies, we have issues getting that moving, so we probably need to try to start setting deadlines for each individual department. We started looking at them internally. Right now, we're ready to contact one department to move forward, another one to try to start moving forward, and one we've contacted but got no response back from her. And I think she asked one of the committee members about us moving forward, I think it was, and then so we reached out to her and never received a response back, but we've actually looked at this for it. The next one will be notify the full county commission, which is required with
Who needs to set this schedule?
We'll bring you a tentative schedule, and I think the committee here needs to adopt this kind of a
I just wondered if it's some sort of policy.
policy, but as this financial manager, I think since this is going to be involving many departments, we need to work with them hard to find reasonable schedules, and then kind of get them
You're not going to get something.
That's what we're saying, but right now, we've got to get more data of what's required on some of it, because some of these we have to do full-blown policies, and probably like ECC, we need Kronos to get involved, because when we originally talked to them, they wanted to use advanced timekeeping, so they did a PO for advanced timekeeping, and Kronos, we thought they were canceling the PO for advanced timekeeping, they canceled both, though, and they've got a temporary system over there, so that one's going to be a little more involved, and that's your, third largest department. And it's got 24-hour shifts that ends Wednesday at noon, I think, so it's a very, you've got 24-hour, people working, not 24 hours, you've got people doing long shifts and odd weeks all over the place over there. So we're going to want to really set that one up with advanced timekeeping if they want it. The former director two ago wanted that, but the last one did, and then now she's gone too. So we'll probably need to, I guess Mr. Guthrie's in from, but I don't know when they're, I guess it'll be a while for them. It'll be a little while before they even have a director, so that one I would, even though they're the third largest, I would put in the back burner, because if you're hiring a new director, you probably want to give them time to get acclimated, figure out what's going on before we start sending Kronos and everybody over there to start setting up a timekeeping system, because we're going to have questions for their staff. Hey, how are you doing this manually versus what the policy says? How are you interpreting this policy? Well, we interpret it different. We need to figure out why, stuff like that. We always end up that people are interpreting or not following the policy, mainly because they just don't understand it. So the Kronos timekeeping takes longer than you think. We've got to turn all those into policies, and then we've got to make sure they're compliant with wage and hour and their actual policy goes. So it takes quite a bit of time.
I don't want to step on anybody's toes, because we asked them to simplify their policies that make it, but, I mean, you're saying they don't understand their policies.
Well, that's some of them, but that was when we had the big county when it's been revamped. So we haven't done any of the other ones recently. Some of the offices I can say without a fact, the things I've worked with them for, they're not going to have any problems when we go into it, I would say. Just to use an example, the county clerk's office, anything we work with them comes back excellent. So if we're working for them, we're working with them, we about say they're going to be exactly on, but some of the departments aren't. And it's because they don't understand, or it's like, for instance, their main policy says if you can't observe a holiday, that your manager will work out a time off for you. So that's left for some discussions that lower the comp, except for holiday, but they get to use it. So the libraries have different interpretations of what they mean, and they have a lot of people that don't work on necessarily on those holidays, because they're not even open on those holidays, so they get another day. So we've got to program that, make sure they're following the policy, and that is doing their overtime pay. That's just a small change on our existing policy. But it's nothing that people are doing anything on purpose, it's just their certain policies.
Could we get that timeline by December or January, or when would a reasonable?
Yeah, well, I've got like a final date here, but I'm going to get them to try to start breaking it into pieces by department. But I'm saying, we've got to get that broken apart.
That's what I mean, the by department.
The problem we've got is we don't know what we've got until we start touching it. We look at their policies and we're amending it, and like the sheriff has a very, very complex policy, because even Kronos and Munis both mentioned that.
Okay.
Size, it's very, very complex.
Where is the next one?
The next one is, it's required by the private act that the committee will notify the county commission, school system, and all offices by, and I'm just saying newspaper, website, of what portions are applicable, so that's just what it says in the act. One thing that when we do that we can do internally is on all your check stubs, we can put a memorandum telling what the policies are for purchasing and AP to make sure everybody's verified. And number 10, this is one we ran into a lot of times, is if you're going to move forward, we need to see if we're going to enforce the provisions of, that's where we've kind of in the past, just kind of stopped or deadlocked. Try to read a little faster. And the next 2 pages are actually what I would consider, and I don't know what pages we would consider. This is what I would call actually what the goals are in priority and what their importance. And if you look at the left on the column, it says priority and goals. Number 2, in the middle is where it's referencing the 2012 Act. I tell you where the status and why I have these dates. And some of these dates are pretty far out, but I can tell you what portions we can't complete and why until then. The first one is we need to update the standard operating procedures for all the new software. We just did a new payroll. We keep adding more Kronos, so we're slowed down right now to try to update all those SOPs all across the whole office. November 30th, everybody's required to have every existing SOP updated, and we'll be reviewing it. The reason you've got the March 2024 is because W-2s in this new system won't be prepared until January. They'll be out by the end of January, so February and March we'll be updating those SOPs to finalize those. So that's kind of where we're at. That's why that needs out there that far. The other one's cross-training on the timekeeping system. It's just an issue. If we're not asking for a new employee until July 1, we'll be moving kind of slow, but we want to do a lot of cross-training on the Kronos. We have one employee that's really trained and did a lot of the configuration. We have one employee we hired in that has some Kronos experience because we just haven't had the time to cross-train them, I believe, adequately. And it's the same thing. Any system, you need to have good cross-training and SOPs for your internal controls. And the private act requires us to have internal controls. And the next one will be additional cross-training on payroll and updating the purchasing policy.
Is this a person at each section, each constitutional?
No, that's for my office.
Just
We have,
your office, okay.
our office has hundreds upon hundreds of them, so we have an SOP that sets internal controls for pretty much every process. Talk to audit, we have a lot more complex than most, but there's a couple of reasons when you hire a new employee. You do some training, but you give them those SOPs. And they have the internal controls, they have all the directions. When I got here, we had very few written on napkins and what all over the place. And if you look, we've got SOP after SOP, so if you want to know how to enter the budget into Munis, because Munis have directions, they don't get all the controls we want, so there's a SOP named that.
So let me ask you, you mentioned that one of the issues is just cross-training and ability, or lack of ability to cross-train. Updating all your SOPs, I mean, you're going to alleviate that issue of cross-training, though, right?
No, that's on down here, so what we're doing is we're trying to cross-train too. Yeah, by November 30th, we'll have all the SOPs back for review. Thing is, the management staff has to go back and review for internal controls if we've got questions. And the other thing, my kind of rule is if you've got a set of directions or internal controls and you have to write anything on them, they need to be reworded, you need to include that into them, resubmit them. So ours are all written, Word docs are not handwritten. So ours take on, plus we put screenshots in, and we have regular updates on the system, so all that changes. And we also have a website that we put in, something we created that are actually videos. Kind of what we've got right now, because we did push to get some more Kronos, payroll. The payroll system is kind of, over time, just lagging us back. And then do the day-to-day, we try to push those forward too.
So what I think I hear is that you're trying to develop new tools for the employees where the cross-training need is not as severe, right? I mean,
they already exist, we're updating them all. We've done those. See, I've been here since 2009, and so probably 2009 through we changed software packages. So 2016, 17, 18, we revitalized all the SOPs. Now we've changed the payroll system and went through several new iterations of the software.
what's your tool, once your online tools get updated?
Oh, yeah.
That's I guess the bottleneck around cross-training, that would improve.
That's what we're hoping. Plus, we're hoping like if this person comes in, we train the new AP person trying to pull these in, we're gonna try to, for a better word, slow walk to get all this cross-training in before we go forward. My concern is we're moving forward with existing staff, so we're prioritizing number one, the day-to-day, number two, implementation. I think we're gonna have to go day-to-day, SOPs, and then implementation. Because mine is, I feel, we've got good controls, but really for an excellent set of controls, you need good direction with all the internal controls written in there. They need to be reviewed, and then we need to randomly test to make sure they're all being followed. And we communicate them, but they help develop them, so they're communicated, but we give them to the new employees. So we're trying to meet all the things for the COSO internal controls too, so.
Yeah, you mentioned go back and look at the controls in place and do some topic testing. Is that?
Yeah, your SOPs all have the controls in there.
So, I mean, so is that inside of your scope? I mean, you have a bench, the ability to do that with your existing staffing, or is that be a one-off to go test the controls? You would test them all, and you test a random sample of those, but I mean, do you have the bodies to do that?
Well, we do that. I'll go by and look for behavior variances, that's how we find errors, and we find out what causes errors. And we see, and people have checklists and things we're looking for AP to come through from internal controls. Like if you're an AP clerk, you know to look for certain things. If you're doing a bid, you know to look for certain things. You know to look for certain things for the possibility of error, certain things for the possibility of fraud. So we start looking for those things. So, I'm not saying you spend like an hour on each invoice, would never get done, but you're looking for certain small things.
So in your case, you're looking at the exception report as the control.
We have little perceptions, and also for instance, we don't take invoices with changes on unless they're just crossed out for some reason. We have all those controls. The problem we've got is, at some point in the next couple of years, most things, including this, probably need some more advanced tools, because with all the really good printers and sophisticated people, I mean, it's a lot easier if you think about it. You go and you print an invoice, it's equipment, and you put a corporation on there, so don't get a 1099. You get you an address somewhere, and if there's two of them involved, it's very hard for us to detect that. It used to be in the past it wasn't, because the invoices are harder to create, the invoices got easy. So, we've got controls in mind. It's like everybody else, we need to try to get better controls every day. Yeah.
Just one last thing. You said that there were updates 3 consecutive years there. How often do updates come?
We went from version 13 to something that was a full-blown update. Now they're not going to do that anymore, but they do these regular updates, so some of your screens change. So it's not changing the full operation, but it changes the screens. And if you're going to keep those for new staff members, when they change, we try to change them, so we try to get screenshots of them. Nothing's better than a picture. You've ever followed a set of directions with a picture that's a good one? It's written, it's a lot better than when you write, look at screen, whatever. And then the other is updating the purchasing policy. Goal, and I think me and Toby still kind of talked through a few things, is maybe try to get that done February 2024. To get back to this committee in February to send on the commission. Because right now, it's going to be hard to meet in December, I think, for everybody.
So the updated purchasing policy, does that have to go to the subcommittee?
What should happen is the subcommittee should come back with a recommendation, and then you guys take it or amend it or rework it. And then it goes to county commission, same thing, they take it, leave it, or rework it.
So when you look at February, you're looking at it hitting full commission at that point, or subcommittee, or?
I would like to see it come back, this committee in February, that way we could hit March.
Back to the table in February.
And the same thing, some of the things wouldn't be active in July anyway, if we're talking highway, we're not putting staffing in July. We wouldn't be really doing any changes.
Okay.
Number 2, if you look, we're wanting to do the ERP bid module right now. What we do is your PO and stuff's in unison. There's actually a bid module, we want to do it electronically. But we're going to have to do a hybrid, because there's a state statute that says minority-owned and small businesses, you have to give them the option of manual. And then also you got to get the comptroller's approval that the system has control. So what I'm going to, we want to do it as much as possible automated, and let you do electronic bidding and maintain it. If anybody sends us manual bid, their staff will scan those in to happen. But we do have to accept and put on the website manual bids, because there's a statute for small and minority-owned businesses that you will not. And we will, before we move forward on that, actually have to get the comptroller's approval. So the reason I've got the September date, we're moving forward right now with trying to do the electronic bidding and getting approval. The reason I have September, if we hire somebody in July, we'll need August and September to train if we're going to migrate over the highway stuff. So it would take to at least September. My next one is complete implementation of the Munis contract module. That's what we were talking about, Eric, right now, about the controls. Right now, we attach your contracts to invoices. We put a few of them in the module, and we contract them to POs. What we want to do is we're going to try to move to the point where we put all contracts in there with numbers and link them back. That way, there's control for every contract. Because really, when we ran into the issue of trying to get the leases and the software, so we're hoping to have that one done by January of 2024. We're already doing it in a small version. If the policy is adopted in January, requiring all of them to be sent to us, then we'll start indexing them all. We're going to try to start indexing them by probably year, department, type, and give a number to them. That way we keep up the contracts better. We think we can do that with existing staff because we're already doing part of it anyway. The other one's full implementation of self-service. I have January 2025. And the reason for that is because we're actually going to try to put some of the open enrollment in there. And our next open enrollment is in May. So we're going to do the open enrollment, try it, test it, after we actually do our open enrollment this year, which is 2012. This is June, so it'll be May 24th, and we want a whole year to try and get that all worked out. One of the reasons we're wanting a longer period of time, it may be much shorter than that, is because also with it online, we want to work excessively with IT to make sure security is in there. Because right now, you can look at your check stub, but you don't have your social security number, and we think it's secure. We're going to shortly turn on the W-2s, and our understanding is IT's looked at it, it's secure, but we want to make sure each one is secure, because it's got numbers on it. Then the other one is right here is migrate Highway Department's purchase order and PO function. Tentatively October 2024, basing on being the highway superintendent working out any kind of issues that may ensue before then.
Hey, Tony, does that seem recent to you?
You know, Todd, I think it's something that's just a working process, and as we work towards that goal, we see, it's something that, I look at it from a different standpoint. It's something that's never been done in our history, and it's something that, can it be done? I think so. I've got friends that road superintendents in other counties that are very successful with the finance department doing the POs. I mean, they basically do a PO and get it within just a few, 10, 15 minutes, they got the PO and go home. So there's things that I need to look into, because one thing that we look at the compliance and the centralized location and how important that is for our government. Also, I look at it from a safety factor. I do the most dangerous job here in the county as far as my people. Construction's number one. From OSHA standpoint, I'm a certified trainer. It's number one in the nation for death. So if we've got a 4,000-pound moving bullet that we work around, we're in traffic every day, nearly the whole time, and we have to work around that. And so the thing is, if we get an emergency situation and I need a PO quickly to fix a piece of equipment that's broke down in the middle of the roadway, I need to make sure that we can get it in a timely manner. And that's some of the things that me and Dave are talking about, because it's a safety factor for me. Compliance is one thing, but safety and the liability and something happening that could cost the county millions is a big deal.
Right.
And so us doing our due diligence and making sure that we dot
How
every I.
you do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's all that's important to me,
Right.
is making sure we do it the smart, right way.
Now, emergency purchases, we've already got that addressed, because what it says on the policy already in existing is if you have an emergency purchase before you even try to get a PO, you abate your emergency. So you're going to go ahead and abate, and actually, like business toward, he's going to go ahead and call the repair people before he even gets the PO, if it's technically stuck in a road or somebody's in danger. Then he'll call to get a PO immediately after that, and we'll start working with him. If we're closed, then he's got 24 hours after we're open back up to get it. So we've already dealt with some of those. Me and Toby just hadn't went through them the other day. We went over and started working on it, and unfortunately I had to go to the doctor with a small issue today. We've been trying to get together. But we've got a lot of those worked out, but we still need to go through a little well and see if there's anything else here or there that can be worked out.
How is it mostly in the counties in the state?
Right now, all of our sides, they're all in the finance department except for one, which is Rutherford, and Rutherford has a central purchasing department in the mayor's office, is my understanding when I talked to them, but I'd have to verify, it's been a while, maybe. But there's actually a centralized report that I brought, I think, last month in here. I think the next largest one that does highway, does their own piece, is like the 11th, POs is like the 11th largest, and they're about half our size or less. And then the other thing is the private act is pretty clear. The issue we've got right now, like Toby's POs, they don't encumber funds in the system, which is a problem gap. Audit's not done anything about it, but I'm not really sure. Last year, the auditor brought that up to me, and I'm like, well, I told audit several years ago that was happening, and so they kind of dropped back on it. I don't really know why, but I guess because I brought it several years earlier, nobody wanted it. But the auditor actually brought it up last year, but they didn't. But the same thing, don't encumber, and then the same thing, really, it's best to have checks and balances and segregation of bids. You don't really want the same person writing the specs bidding or receiving the specs by herself. It's in control of the department. So really, your internal controls are very weak if you control that whole process. Development of bid, receiving, and awarding to bidders. That's why we're saying half a person too, and Toby needs to have his people too, because they would be developing specs, sending them over, so when you add any new controls, there's automatically going to be, but the long term it saves you issues. And then, to be fair to Toby, one of the issues Toby's had problems is he's new, and we're the largest ones doing it this way. And his main focus is, he's saying, taking care of the roads and his guys on the road, which should be, I guess probably the other way around, the guys on the road and the road. You know, for those days, we just never, I guess,
The safety's the biggest key for me.
and as I said, we can handle all those things, but me and Toby do need to get back together, and, because we tried to today, but it was, been kind of hectic days for us, I think, for everybody.
Will that be something you do in the next meeting?
What I'd like to do is me and Toby meet and then get the purchasing policy, something workable back to the subcommittee and then back up to this guy. With a timeline of probably that October 1, if we can get everything worked out, so we can get training. And what I'd like to do, you know, when we do it, is have this committee basically say, you know, right now I'm limited to one PO section, and then also, if it's over, I can grant several times during that new period, basically say, hey, if he's got any reasonable reason, we scoot them on through and don't even bring back to committee, just automatic approval for a couple of months, just to keep it smooth, if that makes sense. Because you're going to have any new process, and Toby don't want to be down here with any process issues.
To keep us moving along, can we
Yeah, we'll be back.
finish up the next 7 minutes here?
The next one's the project ledger, the same thing we're talking about. That is for thing, and what the private act says, the county system shall have real-time access to all documents necessary through the enterprise resource planning system to proficiently accounting for all grants. And what that means is, that means the audit of the grants too, if you're going through there. Well, your auditors is going to ask for your application, your grant agreement, all your correspondence, your closure report, and all your requests for reimbursement. So that's something we're requesting, that a policy adopted that requires those grant administrators to provide those information. We were down that road several years back, but then we were halted by another official. That's all I want to say. I don't want to say anything negative. The next one is the reconfiguration of Chronos. Basically, you had a advanced timekeeping system over at the EMS station. The employee that does that is gone now. They are still running the system, but it's kind of needing a little bit of work and reconfiguration. They were required to take care of it. Part for that half employee, we're wanting to actually help the EMS out a little more on this. We don't know when we start looking at the two functions if there's enough to do both of those. But there is some configuration stuff that does need to be looked at the EMS timekeeping, their advanced scheduling. We're responsible for Chronos. They were responsible for advanced time scheduling, not part of our system. But the thing we've got, their advanced time scheduling sends information over to the Chronos system for time.
Is that the staff that you're talking about?
Yes, the staff. So we need to look at that. That's why I have to be determined. Talking to the payroll manager today, she doesn't think it needs a huge amount of configuration, just a few things here and there. But we do need a plan of how it's going to be maintained long term. They are trying the same thing. We had the guy that was doing that left. They didn't even refill it as the assistant chief. They didn't really position, actually cut the position from one other time that year. So they actually cut the position. So the person used to do is gone, and he's in the position. And there's the citations from the act. Fully integrate the Cronus, and we have a goal for June 2025, and what that means is we would like to have them all in there and running. We're not asking to do the whole back yet. That would still be with finance, massaging those few existing employees for the non-holdback employees until this committee and the commission figures out what they want to do and when. But I'd like to get the system on up and running a little while before we address that, because I don't really want to tie the system back to people having their check held back.
I don't want to take a lot of time with this discussion, but how long has this county been trying to implement Kronos?
We didn't really start on it until
Or a digital time?
probably about 17, and then we stopped for a while, and then because they were working on the private act, and then whatever happened, the whole things. So I think probably out of that whole period, the last 2 years is when we've been working on it.
But we've been trying,
We've been,
you said 17?
and the issue's being, and that's the issue we got into, we're prioritizing day-to-day and then implementation. Right now, we're going to need to do day-to-day, SOPs, and then implementation. But in the half of staff, that's one reason that we're going to try to use that first help push Cronus on through to get it done. So we worked on those 2 large departments and the ones in this building for the main thing. It took us really about 2 years. So we're looking at getting all these small departments, and I sent you the list last month. There's a large list, and they have several personnel policies. Clerk and Master has his own circuit. There's a whole group of them. And they have very large variances in them. And then the last 2 is 2 that's required by the Act, but I think they are the lowest priority. One is implement Munis fixed asset module. We're doing it on Excel. We own the module. It is required. It would be best to be able to pull it out of there. We would like to move that in there, but we consider that one of our lowest priorities. And then the last is the Munis budget module. Right now, we're entering the stuff back in, and we are doing it on Excel. What we want to do is move it over there. And I was actually at one point looking at extending the actual entry module to end users and had it set up. The problem we ran into is the payroll didn't do quite what we wanted to. So it's going to require some time, but I would prefer to get Kronos done before we tackle the one with the budgeting or the fixed assets.
So capital assets, David, I mean, what's the current process now?
We do them on Excel, and we ask for additions, deletions, and information from departments, and then for new purchases, we go to the general ledger and look for it. If we do the new one, then we could flag them in the general ledger. But the problem we've got to enter all the historical data and then reconcile it. And then we were at that point, and then we stopped because of various other projects. We were about, I'd say 50% down, and we stopped that project. Because we started, we ran excessive overtime, couldn't keep up, and didn't want to provide additional staffing, so we just pretty much stopped. So right now, we're going to have to rework all that. And it's the same thing. We started on the budgeting too, and we stopped. It's the same thing. It's kind of, we prioritizing, and we ran out of time. We had to stop.
So on the Excel, you've got the controls in place. It's just more manual and labor intensive, right? And you're wanting more of an automated answer approach to it, right?
Plus the ERPs, the goal and the vision of the ERP system was that basically everything required for the financial, even for other departments connected to it, if they want to utilize it in some way, would have all the data electronic and provided there you can look at fixed data.
Maybe my question's a little bit, you have comfort in the integrity of the numbers?
Oh, yeah, the numbers are fine. I don't think we're going to run into the same thing we do now. If somebody disposes of it, the ERP has no way to capture unless one of us does that and get the information from the sale. The thing that's going to be better is capturing. We do it manually right now, but the employees are very proficient at capturing. It just takes time, so we have somebody dedicated to it several weeks to capture all that data. And I've got an employee. But honestly, the amount of setup time is probably going to be 2 years worth of time to do it, but at the end of the day, you're going to have a system. And right now, we can go back to general ledger to get invoices where you can link your invoices to it. So it's going to have some, there's integrity, it's good, but we have hard books to fix that. It's going to put it where you're all laying over time.
It's integrated, pretty good overall control structure.
And you're going to, because we're trying to move toward it too. And very few counties have done that, but we're trying to move it in.
I don't want to stop the discussion here, but if there's any more questions, please send them to David after the meeting.
So what
I think we got some commissioners that need to leave in a few minutes here.
So what I've got to request is that this is what you guys need to have is some type of format, and not going to give it, of an implementation plan. And this is kind of possibly a starting point if you guys want to accept it or amend it, and then we can come back and bring this section and kind of work on it,
So,
and add on to it and remove the upper portion.
can I make a motion that we go with this implementation plan as presented?
I'll second that, because
With,
they're on page 39 right there, where, I mean, I don't know what kind of non-movement we're talking about, that the comptroller and the commissioner of revenue would withhold funds from us and that kind of thing. I know this might be the same kind of thing with that act where as long as you're making progress toward making sure buildings are accessible.
That's the statute, and I put this statute in for two things. The one is, this year, and that's why I'm asking for the grant module, we had a very hard time getting together, because we have August 31st deadlines, and we're still working, getting the stuff with the software, putting it on our books, because we need the contracts. And that's just saying, this is what happens if we can't comply, they'll withhold the money. The second statute I'll put in there real quickly is the one about, I only mention it for one reason, because the state statute says all departments are supposed to have a policy on waste. Waste is very broad, so my recommendation is this committee comes back, determines something reasonable what waste is that we and other departments should be responsible for reporting. And I'm not talking about somebody disagrees with what somebody's buying, I'm talking about waste. You need to define it down, because if not, you've got a runaway, we're not doing it, you get fussed at it if it's going the other direction, it's a runaway
Are
train.
you talking about waste like resource authority, or are you talking about waste?
I'm talking about if we see something in finance so pervasive, we think it's waste, there's a mechanism to report it, but then there's things that clearly define certain things aren't waste. Like you disagree if somebody buys something that's statutory authorized, that's not waste. I mean, that's
Somebody expensing is.
And if I
Well, we
could-
wouldn't let them do that. Well, that didn't fall off now,
If
yeah.
I could finish my motion.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, everybody's, so, if we implement this, but we need to, send the budget, we need resources. And it sounds like over the years, we've stopped and gone, and resources, if I go back and I look at the last month's report, we had resources and then they're pulled off. They go over here, and then there was the IT people that we read about last month that disappeared. So I'd like to send a request to budget. I'd like to look at a motion to implement this plan and send to budget a request to fund half a position for the rest of the year. For half a year.
I'll have my second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Anybody abstain? All right.
David, thank you, this was really helpful.
Yeah, it's been definitely.
And before we go, and I know I've got a seat out there too.
Okay.
Just really quickly, I know that at the beginning, we discussed moving our meeting to 5:30 in December, because a lot of these items look like they're actually rolling to old items. Section C, the policy. Can we, instead of 5:30, move that to 5 o'clock? Because I think we're going to need the time.
Well,
Five?
yeah, I was just trying to keep some time.
Just because those look like they're going to.
Subcommittee probably won't meet in January because of December, when we're talking about that. If they don't meet in January, they won't be back here in February to purchase them.
Okay,
And they probably need to develop a policy on waste, and,
okay. Then leave it at 5:30?
oh, you don't need to do that.
And everything that's left, I move to old business, if anything's left.
Well, there's one thing, if I can do it like 2 seconds, and I'll just explain. The very last item. What happened was, we got the ARPA funds, and Toby was given lots of asphalt funds. Our policy says that the highway public works funds exempt from our policy. Toby was thinking that that meant anything the highway expended, which wasn't. So when he did his ARPA, me and him were talking, he said, we're bidding the, was it Upper Station Camp?
Yeah.
And I thought it meant he was bidding it through my office, through our purchasing person. Well, he bid it himself. Well, because of the weather, the bid was fine, other than that they didn't bid, because we looked at the bid, followed all the ARPA rules and everything else. The only issue we've got is he did the bid, but he was going to run out of time if he didn't go ahead and proceed forward. He wasn't about to finish Upper Station Camp. So the question was, and I sent it to Colin, and Toby agreed too. One, if you guys can grant exemptions for anything, so if you grant that, we can pay it out of the ARPA. If you don't, he's gonna pay it out of his Highway Public Works. And since we've got a time limit on ARPA, I'd prefer to see if you guys could pay it out of the, ARPA, so I'm just asking you guys to grant an exemption that he be able to do ARPA stuff.
I'll make a motion.
Does everybody understand the motion on the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We have a motion in the meeting?
For clarification, the 18th, 5 or 5:30?
5 o'clock. We have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.